Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the PVD Horror Podcast. My name is Dave. I'm joined here with my co host, Brandon. And joining us today is Adam Marcus. This name you might recognize from director role in Jason Goes to Hell, which is currently celebrating its 30th anniversary, as well as co-writing Texas Chainsaw 3D, and now currently promoting the Christmas horror action film Secret Santa, which is currently streaming on Screambox. So Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Of course. If you like all things horror and want to get the best horror news, interviews, and reviews,
like, subscribe, and ring that bell to follow us and satisfy all your horror needs.
Nice. So, Adam, you started your career at a young age. What inspired you to become a filmmaker?
Well, part of the story is unique. Part of the story is probably something you've heard a million times. But the first part of it is that my whole family was, to some degree, in the business. So, for example, my uncle was a guy named Ned Eisenberg. Ned played Eddie in The Burning.
Okay.
So it was one of the leads of that movie when I was really little. And he, if you watch Law and Order, he's like in every fifth episode. So he's one of those guys you're like, oh, that guy, I love that guy.
Yeah.
You have no idea what his name is, but you love that guy. So I had him. My Uncle Joe wrote, produced, and directed Don't Go in the House. Which famously battled Friday the 13th at the box office for 5 minutes. So that was so the filmmaking aspect was there as well. Most of my family have all been on Broadway, a lot of singers and actors and the like. So when I was 9, my dad came up to pick me up on a Saturday for our weekend together. And he rushed up because the night before he had seen something on its opening night in the city. And he said, I have a movie we got to go to like right now. I'm taking you immediately. So we drove to the closest theater to my house. And within seconds, I was immersed in, space. And suddenly the Tantive 4 flies over my head and then an Imperial Star Cruiser. And I looked up at the screen and just went, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And my dad, because I was 9, thought I wanted to be an astronaut. And I was like, no, I want to make that.
Yeah.
And I can say very clearly from that moment, from 9 years old, I have not spent one day not pursuing that.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I was very lucky. By the way, if you hear some jingle bells around me, it's my dog.
I did hear it actually.
Yeah,
I thought it was just you being festive.
No, he's my sound effects guy. So he handles all the jingle bells in the house, but he is my shadow, so I can't go anywhere without him.
I was just like, wow, Adam really loves Christmas. That's impressive.
I really do. Which by the way is more impressive given the fact that I'm Jewish. And the reason for Secret Santa is because my parents were married on Christmas Eve. And so these two Jews would have this like extraordinary Christmas Eve party every year that had the full Christmas regalia. I mean, we had more Christmas decorations than any of the Christian friends I had. Like, it was insane, right? I mean, it was crazy. And the problem is, when I was 6 years old, as I mentioned earlier, my dad had to come pick me up for the weekend. My parents split, like everybody of my generation. We were suddenly 5 and 6, and suddenly that was it. Relationships were over. And so they would still have the party. So everybody would still show up, and it was like 100 people, and everybody's smiling and happy on the outside. So be like, oh my God, everything looks amazing. Merry Christmas. Where's my fucking check? So like the party changed tenor in this very kind of crazy way for a little kid's ears.
Yeah.
So that was, terrifying, and also sort of made me go like, wow, maybe everybody's full of shit on Christmas. So that is what inspired it. Anyway, the other part of it is that, at an early age, my best friend was a kid named Noel Cunningham. Since I was 8 years old, he was my best buddy. And it was rumored that his dad had made porn movies. which is true, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
That is true. In fact, Noel, my friend, played Marilyn Chambers' love child in a movie called Together, which was Sean's directorial debut, which was a hardcore pornography movie. And Marilyn Chambers, not trying to brag, but she graduated from my high school. So anyway, I knew, I really didn't hear the porn part. I think it was too young. I didn't really care. But I heard the filmmaker part. And so anytime Sean was doing anything with film, I was there. I was in the room. I had to be around it. Like, I wanted to soak all of that up. And I started to, and he kind of liked having me around. I think I was some sort of a pet for him. And so by the time I was there for the first Friday the 13th when I was 10 years old. And by the time I was 13, I was apprentice editing for his wife, Susan, who was a brilliant editor and amazing person, was like a second mother to me. And, you know, I was apprentice editing on the movie Spring Break, which is like the last movie you want a 13-year-old boy apprenticing on.
Is that Johnny Depp?
No. Oh, God.
No.
Oh, I only wish. My God. No,
Yeah.
Johnny hadn't even gotten his break yet. He hadn't even done Nightmare on Elm Street yet, so I hadn't been discovered.
Okay.
I know that because I read the Johnny Depp part for Wes Craven in a table read of that movie. I was really young, but I did that reading. No, that movie, I don't think you can really say anybody is famous from it. But there was a Penthouse Playmate in it. And there was also, or I'm sorry, Penthouse Pet. I think that's what they were called, Penthouse Pets. And the guy, have you ever seen the movie Pig, the Nicolas Cage movie, that amazing film where he plays the crazy chef? There's that incredible scene between him and another chef where he confronts him in this restaurant. And the chef ends up sitting down and having a whole come to Jesus with him about like food and what the real meaning of life is. That cat is the lead of the movie Spring Break. I kid you not. I'm watching Pig and I'm like, is that? I haven't seen that guy in 40 years. Like, since I was a little kid, I haven't seen that guy. So anyway, I worked on Spring Break, which is truly just wall-to-wall boobs. Like, that's the whole movie. By the way, it unseated, this is a true thing, it unseated The Empire Strikes Back from the #1 spot at the box office. That is that is back when a movie that was wall-to-wall boobs could do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of an amazing, it was an amazing anything can happen time. Sean Cunningham, in fact, turned down the movie Red Dawn to do Spring Break because he knew Spring Break would make more money. And by the way, that's a theme. Like, that's a theme for Sean's filmmaking. Whatever's going to make the most money, that's where he goes. Like, that's where we would, So I worked on that movie, and I love to say that, I went into the editing room a boy and came out a man. And at the same time, I was heavily immersed in theater because, again, I lived in a town that was primarily, I mean, the local high school was built around an existing theater that the Doors played at, that Jimi Hendrix played at. So we had this like incredible theater to work at, and a high school got built around it. So it was one of the only towns where a public school, the theater paid for all the sports programs. We supported all the football players. It was an amazing place. Paul Newman lived down the street. I sang at Martha Stewart's house for Christmas parties. I mean, it was nuts. Like, it was very weird growing up. And by the time I was 15, I started my first of 2 theater companies. And I was able to make enough money doing theater because my family, we lived in a very wealthy town, but we didn't have money. My company was strong enough that I was able to go to NYU Film School and pay to make movies and pay to do that. So it was kind of, I think it was having a singular focus. And when people go like, wow, you started so young, I'm like, well, I know I'm 23 when I direct Jason Goes to Hell, but I've been in the business since I was 11.
Yeah.
So it's like this idea that I didn't pay any dues. No, I paid some dues, and I worked for some people that were pretty awful and threw things at me and all of that. So, so I did the trial by fire. And in fact, while I was at NYU, I worked at a company called R. Greenberg and Associates, which is an amazing place, where they did, if you remember the old titles for Superman, the titles that fly in at you, they did that. They won the Academy Award for Predator Vision. They're the ones who did the Predator. In fact, I worked on Predator 2 while I was there, but I worked on Silence of the Lambs. I worked on Goodfellas. Yeah, so like I worked under Brian De Palma for a period of time there. I mean, it was an amazing experience, and that was all during college. That's while I was still in school. I won Best Picture at NYU for a very unlike NYU movie. It was a comedy, and it was sort of it was not their brand. So much so we won Best Picture, and we won the Ensemble Award, which is the first time they'd ever given it at NYU, because my cast, I had an insane cast. Do you guys know who Tom Lennon is from Reno 911? Officer Dangle with the short shorts? Yeah, the guy who created the show. So he and Joe Latruglio, who's Andy Samberg's partner on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, those were my two leads of my movie. So I had like a legit kind of amazing. They're in that group, that group, The State.
I love The State. Yeah.
Okay, so those are okay. Carrie Kenny and I have been friends since we were 8 years old.
Wow.
She was my brother Kip's first girlfriend. So like I've directed Carrie in like 12 plays, I think about 12 musicals.
Yeah.
So again, there was this kind of laser focus to do something, and I stayed with it. And I got 2 job offers off of my student film at NYU. One was to write in the writer's room for season 2 of Twin Peaks. Mark Frost and David Lynch offered me a job on that show. And the only other job I got was from Sean Cunningham, who had moved to Los Angeles by this point, and he said, "Come to LA, be my bitch for a year," which is his words, not mine, and I'll give you your shot.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna go make a movie.
Yeah.
So I rushed. I mean, I went to LA so fast, it was just stupid. And I literally had no money. I had $300 in my pocket and no driver's license. I'd been living in New York. I didn't need a driver's license. Why would I do that and carry insurance and all that? So I got to LA, and I had in my back pocket a screenplay I had been working on. I've been workshopping for the last 3 years in college with my best friend in school, this guy, Dean Laurie, called Johnny Zombie. And so I really wanted to make this movie. I wanted it to be my debut. And I started, crashing charity events, because I had a lot of friends from NYU who are now working in catering in Los Angeles, and they would sneak me into events. And I would show up in a tuxedo, and I would dance with any female executive I could find and schmooze them and try to talk to them about my movie. And I got a few people interested in the project. I then told Noel that news, knowing full well Noel would tell Sean.
Yeah. And
Sean immediately was like, "That's a script." So he read the script. He hated it, but he loved the title. So he's going to give me $1.5 million to shoot it in Connecticut, to go back to Connecticut and shoot this movie, because that was more the setting. And I was thrilled, but he wanted to fire my friend off the script. He wanted to buy it from him, then fire him and get another writer. And I was like, well, then I'm not going to do it. And at 21, that's when you really have like giant balls and not enough smarts to know like you should not be doing what you're doing right now.
Right.
But and he said that, he's like, "Wow, the ball's on you." And I was like, "Look, let's do this. Bring Dean out here, put the 2 of us up in the shittiest motel you can find, and give us notes and let us write. And we'll fix whatever you want us to fix. He's a great writer. Let's do it." And he did. Shockingly, he did. And he flew Dean out, put the 2 of us up in a Holiday Inn, so it wasn't too shitty. It was kind of nice. And we wrote for weeks, and ended up with a movie that Sean loved so much that he was like, "Okay, we need to get more money for this. I want to get a studio backing this rather than doing this independently." And so we were going to go out and send the movie to everybody to read. And I went, "But Sean, you told me nobody reads." that like we're in a town where nobody reads a script. I said, and this script is so weird. It's a rated hard R horror comedy with musical numbers. No one's going to get this. Like, this is a weird movie. And he says, well, what do you suggest? I said, why don't we read it to them? And he was like, what? I said, let's do stage readings. Let's invite people as though we're giving them something special.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, that sounds really cool. And the two, my theater background and Sean came from the Broadway stage. Sean was a stage manager for the original Wait Until Dark on Broadway. So that's how he started his career. So he was totally into the idea of showmanship. So we brought together, so the same people who cast Jason Goes to Hell, Hughes and Moss, Julie Hughes and Barry Moss. Barry Moss was a Broadway casting director. That's what he did. That's his whole life. He did that, and he cast the entirety of The Cosby Show. So he knew everybody in New York. Like, that was his world. And so he started calling these like amazing stage actors for us. And so I had a table read of this movie that was nothing but Tony Award winners. And the guy who played my lead, who played Johnny at this reading, was Dean and my next door neighbor for 3 years during NYU, Adam Sandler. He literally did the reading the week before he flew to New York for his audition for SNL. The week before.
Oh, man.
So, it was insane. It was insane.
You need to make a movie of your life, man, because this is all nuts how everything just falls together. It's pretty cool. You know?
No, I'm writing a book about all of it right now, actually.
There you go.
But here's the thing. It's a lot of our industry and a lot of the way things work is being at the right place at the right time. Absolutely. And to not think of yourself as lucky is, I think, foolish and also grandiose in its own way. Like, no, I did all of this by sheer will. But I will say this. A lot of it is the willingness to say yes all the time and to not expect that there's going to be a wall that you can't get around. Sure. So everything for me was like, because trust guys, I mean, when I first moved to LA, again, $300, no driver's license. I bought a car that I lived in. So I had and by the way, the worst car in the world to live in, a VW Bug, a 1963 Canary Yellow VW Bug.
You could not have found a smaller car.
It's horrifying. Like, when I think about it now, I'm like, oh man, like my back hurts immediately when I think about VW Bugs. And it was all metal, like nothing cozy. It was it was an early Bug. Because it was the only car I could get for $300. That was it. So I was a bike messenger in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. My calves to this day are like watermelons from just the bike riding I did at that time period. So but it was the idea of like, if I'm going to do this, no matter what the adversity, I'm not going to say no. There's no way.
Right.
And so we did these readings of Johnny Zombie. We ended up with a bidding war for the movie. So New Line wanted to do it, and I was psyched. I was like, yeah, let's go to New Line. Like, they're going to get it. They're going to know what this movie is. And Disney wanted it. And Disney backed up a truck of money, and Sean went, bring it in. Bring it back.
Bring it on in.
Yep. And they were going to make an $8 million movie. I immediately knew, like, there's no way they're going to let me direct this movie. That's just not going to happen. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm an associate producer on this movie now. And I turned to Sean. I said, I just made you a shit ton of money. Give me a movie. You owe me a movie now. And he was like, Marcus, the best thing about you is you're the world's biggest nudge. And I said, yes, I am. That's absolutely true. Give me a movie.
Yeah.
And he said, well, New Line's going to buy Jason Voorhees from Paramount. So if you can figure out a way to get that fucking hockey mask out of the movie, I'll let you write and direct it.
Okay.
So that's how that came about.
Oh, yeah. I'm running down the hall like, woo! And then I suddenly stopped. I was like, wait, take the what out of the what? What am I doing? But that was the job. And I just went, Okay. Now, and here's the thing. I know that Sean famously has gone on to say that I'm a liar for saying that he did not say take the hockey mask out of the movie. So I'm going to give you a scenario here. This is important. This is an important point of order. Okay, so one of two things happened. Either a 22-year-old me said to a 50-year-old Sean S. Cunningham, the creator of the Friday the 13th franchise, the producer of Last House on the Left, the maker of the House films. I said to him, hey, listen, man, that hockey mask is so lame. We're getting that out of the movie. Well, Adam, I mean, the fans really, hey, I'm 22 and I graduated from NYU. I know what I'm talking about, and you're going to do what I say. And he said, you bet, Adam. Wow, you're powerful. Or he said, get the fucking hockey mask out of the movie and I'll let you make it. And I said, you got it, boss.
Yeah.
By the way, I'll take either scenario because either I'm the Joel Silver of 22-year-olds that overpowered this man. Either I'm the most powerful 22-year-old to ever be in existence, or Sean's a fucking liar. So either one.
Yeah, either way, you became like the youngest director that was hired for the studio and became New Line Cinema's largest release ever. So either way, it's a win, you know?
Yeah,
so.
it's really cool. No, it's really cool. It was really cool. And look, Sean loved the movie we were making. Like, there was never a moment. Sean was there for every step of the way. He loved the movie. And he was into it. And look, you have to remember, Sean Cunningham only made the first Friday the 13th. He just made the original film. He didn't make any of the sequels. So they came to him to make part 2, and he said, great. Sean never saw an idea that John Carpenter had that he didn't want to steal and make money off of. So Sean's response was, I'm going to make movies about the unluckiest day of the year, in the same way that Carpenter wanted to make movies about Halloween. He didn't want to make Michael Myers movies. He didn't want to do that. That foisted on him because the producer went, no, you have a shark in the water. You got Jaws. You don't then tell people you're making Jaws and you've got a squid. No, you stay with the shark. So Sean was told, well, why don't we make the movie about Jason? And Sean literally said, who? They went, the kid that drowned. He's like, the little kid, the jump scare I stole from Carrie? You want to make a whole movie about that guy? What's that movie? And they said, we know, we'll put him in the woods with a sack on his head. And Sean said, oh, great. Elephant Man, the movie. You're doing Elephant Man, the horror film. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. By part 3, and remember, Steve Miner, who was Sean's protege, who was me 10 years before I came around, Steve Miner's the one who directed part 2 and part 3. So, and Susan Cunningham cut part 2. So his wife actually edited that movie, and it's by far the best edited of all those films. It's a beautifully made movie.
Yeah.
But Sean thought the whole thing was ridiculous, but he was happy to give his protege a job, and he was very happy to give his wife a job. So he did that, right? Well, then they do part 3, and they show him the hockey mask in summer, and Sean goes, I thought the sack was stupid. What are you guys doing? And here's the thing, by the time I got to Sean, the only movies anybody would talk to about with Sean were Friday movies. Yeah. So Sean suddenly was the producer in the Iron Mask, except it was a hockey mask.
Yeah.
And so it got foisted upon him. He didn't want to make those movies. He didn't like the Friday the 13th movies. He didn't like them. I loved them. I was like a lunatic fan. He was the guy who was going like, ugh. So I said, hey, why don't we fix this ridiculous timeline that the Friday series has? Because even from part 1 to part 2, you've got this, this hydrocephalic headed kid, this 11-year-old at the bottom of Crystal Lake. He's been sitting there for 30 years. At the end of part 1, he jumps up. He's still a little kid. So he's obviously some sort of a monster. He's not like an actual human being. He's this monster boy. Within 2 weeks, because that's how long it is between part 1 and the opening of part 2. In 2 weeks, this guy gains 140 pounds of muscle mass. He gets clothes that fit him. He learns how to read because the only way we could find anybody back then was looking in the yellow pages. He gets a car and learns to drive. And the reason I feel that's the case is because I don't think he walked through town holding mom's head to get to Alice's place. And worst of all of it, he gets a sense of humor. Because if you think about the opening of part 2, it's Jason being one of the jackasses because he takes the head and he puts it in the fridge right next to the creamer. Yeah. And then he hides. And he waits for her to come to the fridge and
the ultimate prank. Like,
this is going to be amazing. He sees my mom's head. This is going to be awesome. Hey, oops. I mean, that's that. Really? So, okay, I'll go with it. But you got a hole much bigger than the problem that Rogue One fixed for the Star Wars films. There's a much bigger problem in the structure of that Death Star. Yeah. And so Jason Goes to Hell ostensibly became a movie that gave the franchise a mythology where all of the monstery things, I mean, by part 6, he's literally Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
You know, by part 7, he's fighting Carrie. And in part 8, he takes a boat ride. So the franchise was in trouble. And I was like, hey, you know what? If we make him a Deadite, suddenly all bets are off. Now I'll go with any magic you want to play for me. I'll buy it. So, you know, the movie was a reaction from a fan who loved the franchise, but was always bugged by the fact that no one seemed to give a crap about the audience and about them having something that made any modicum of sense.
Yeah.
So
So that reminds me of kind of the thought process with Halloween 6.
Sure.
When they try to give Jason an explanation of how he can.
You mean Friday or Halloween?
Halloween 6 in that they give Michael Myers this backstory with the cult, right? So it's a similar thing where you're trying to give some explanation to fill in the gaps. And...
Well, by the way, next time you watch Halloween 6, watch Jason Goes to Hell right before you watch it again.
Sure.
Because the writer of the film sent Dean Lorey and I a fan letter before he got that job.
Okay.
And told us how much he loved our movie and how much he loved the structure of our movie, and went on and on about Creighton Duke, went on and on about the Stephen Culp character, Robert, the evil reporter. Watch Halloween 6 again. There's a lot of Jason Goes to Hell in that movie, like a crazy amount.
Yeah.
There's the evil boyfriend reporter. It's right there. Who's got his nefarious thing about setting up a house to look like it's more horrible than it is so that he can get better ratings. It's literally out of Jason Goes to Hell. There's the man in black who suddenly appears and is going to solve all the mysteries and all that. I mean, it's a ton of Jason Goes to Hell. So yeah, you're right. That was the period of time where people were trying to rejigger these franchises into something that made some sense.
Yeah.
Because filmmakers kept getting thrown under the bus. Like, make this work.
Sure.
Okay, how do you make a Friday the 13th movie after part 8? How do you make it? He is dissolved by acid in the New York sewer system because we keep so much acid in the New York sewer system. It's just rivers of acid. That's all we got down there.
The reserve, that we keep. Yeah.
Rats and acid. That's what we have in New York.
Yep.
He's mush by the end of the movie. So now where do we go? He's a mush monster? Is it the Toxic Avenger? Like, and that's the thing. No one ever gave the filmmakers blueprints. By the way, it's why the Nightmare series is more consistently satisfying than any of the other franchises, because there's a consistency in simply Freddy is magical. Freddy comes to you in your dreams. You can't do anything about it.
Sure.
So filmmakers, I mean, like, when filmmakers got handed Nightmare on Elm Street, it was like you were a kid in a candy store because you could do anything and the audience will buy it and it makes perfect sense. You as a filmmaker, you're not doing this Rubik's Cubian math trying to figure out but how does he, what? So no, I think your Halloween 6 point is dead on. It's dead on.
Yeah.
And look how screwed up that timeline is. I mean, the Halloween franchise.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like,
so, we actually did get a chance to talk to Daniel Farrens about
awesome.
Halloween 6.
Yep.
Yeah. And one thing that we did know, and I want to ask if this happened to you. So he did get pretty, I guess it was polarizing, the film.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Like some people loved it or they absolutely hated it. And he did get some pretty strong fan reactions. And that's not something new to him because he's had it happen a couple of times with his films, just because of the nature of them, I guess.
Of course.
Did you have that reaction with Jason Goes to Hell because it was so different?
Okay, so it was an interesting mixed bag. By the way, Daniel's awesome. He's amazing, and he literally, I think he's the first fan letter I ever got, especially from another filmmaker. So that was kind of amazing, right?
Yeah.
And he's very good dude. So okay, when Jason Goes to Hell came out, you have to remember there are two moments in Jason Goes to Hell that almost none of the rest of the franchise ever had. Meaning there were two people jumping out of their seats moment. And I don't mean from fright. I mean from like almost celebration. There is the blowing up of Jason Voorhees. 8 minutes into the movie, we blow him up. And I've literally played all of the tropes of a Friday the 13th film in 8 minutes. I've done all of it, right? And then we get to this explosion. So the audience went out of their minds. And then there was this moment of like, wait, what? Like, now where are we going? Right? Okay. And then there's the end moment of Freddy Krueger returning to take Jason down to hell. Okay.
Yeah.
The movie was so wildly popular the first couple of weeks it was out in the theaters. Because of Rotten Tomatoes and because like anybody can now be a critic on Rotten Tomatoes. So no film has a thermometer reading that's going to mean anything because you're like, oh, good. Jill Jenkins from Cincinnati says, I hate this piece of shit. Like, who is that? Who's Jill Jenkins? Oh, she works for a high school newspaper. Great.
I think I worked with a Jill Jenkins.
There you see? And Jill hates everything.
She did. She really did.
See?
Always talking about it. Talking about it. Yeah.
So back then, Jason Goes to Hell got some great reviews, like better reviews than most of the franchise had gotten. The New York Times liked the movie. The New York Times doesn't like Friday the 13th movies. They like mine. So we had some really good reviews, right? So it's like, okay, this is not the way this is supposed to go. The week after the movie opened, my first two meetings were with Francis Ford Coppola, and then I was flown to New York to meet with Robert De Niro. This is the week after I made Jason Goes to... Those two men saw this movie. I was like, how? And I didn't know, but I mean, Coppola's like a huge horror fan. Like, that's what he loves, right? So there was this kind of beautiful wave of love. And then the internet happened. And there's a guy who did a video called How New Line Cinema Destroyed Friday the 13th. And suddenly there was this wave of hate where I would go to conventions and signings and things. And this is back when conventions weren't what they are now. It was just really hardcore fans. It wasn't this sort of giant culture. I had one guy take a swing at me in a bar.
That's crazy.
Like unprovoked. Like just I walked in, he took a swing. I have been told that I've raped someone's childhood. I've been wished ass cancer on 3 occasions, which is a very specific kind of cancer. I'm like, wow, man. So there's like a lot of people who are lunatic haters, who all seem to find me. And then there is this kind of crazy cult of people who adore this movie. And that's actually been more surprising to me than the hatred, honestly. Because look, Jason Goes to Hell is easily the most divisive in the Friday franchise. It just is. Once they go to space, you're sort of like, well, all right, come on. That's it. We jumped the shark and it's just all...
If you're going to watch it, you know what you're watching.
Exactly. And it's Jason. I mean, it is Kane doing Kane's thing the whole way through. I actually find it remarkable how much hate Jason versus Freddy gets. And I do understand that. I do understand it. I because as a fan of both franchises, I get it. Really get it. That said, I don't know, it was maybe 4.5 years ago now. 4.5 years ago, I had two like crazy fans of Jason Goes to Hell. On my birthday, they made a Facebook page for a Facebook group called Jason Goes to Hell, the final fan page, right? And I was like, oh, that's really sweet. Like, that's a very nice thing. Thanks, guys. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, 100 people are going to sign up for this thing. It'll fizzle and die in a year. It'll just be a sweet thing. No. Thousands of people were on it in days. And I was like, what is this? And suddenly this like wave of like love comes out for the movie. And then these two guys who had a very nefarious plan from day one, and I should have seen it, they start begging me for a documentary on the movie. I had been asked before for a documentary, and I was like, I'm not going to do it. Guys, I did this movie a long time ago. I'm good. I love all the people from it. We're still all friends, but I'm not going to make a doc about this movie. They pushed and they pushed, and I started recounting some of the stories to them that had gone on, especially with Sean and things like that. And they were like, this is such a good story. You got to tell this story. And I was like, okay, if I tell it, I'm not having my company come out of pocket for it. So we'll do a fundraiser. We'll do an Indiegogo. If the fans want it, the fans can pay as they enter. And I'll go make it. And I won't, I won't get paid for it. I know that. I'll just do it to do it and do something fun for the fans. We were funded so fast. It was so crazy how quickly that money showed up. The campaign is still going. It's in on-demand status.
Wow.
And people, literally yesterday, I had more money come into the campaign. I'm like, how is this still happening?
Yeah.
We went to go shoot the movie. This is the end of 2019. The campaign was, we got the money. And the beginning of 2020, we got 29 people in the can in 2 months. Like, we were cruising. I'm like, this movie's going to be done in a year. We're going to be finished. We're out to the fans. And then the plague hit.
Yeah.
And a movie that I'm shooting in people's homes, like I'm going to them and spending time with them. And it's funny because like so much of the world didn't shut down the way Los Angeles did. And, like I have people in Florida who are like, well, it was like 4 months. I'm like, oh, for the love of God.
Not quite.
So 2.5 years later, when people would start letting me back into their homes to shoot something, and that's with masks and socially distanced and everything still, we kept careening down this road. And we literally just locked picture a week ago on Hearts of Darkness, the making of the final Friday. And that's purely from fan love.
Sure.
Purely from that, right? Now, by the way, because the haters are so much of my fan base.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. I come from a point of view. Johnny Carson said early in his career, it takes just as long to be kind and generous with your time as it does to be an asshole. I could not agree more. So when someone comes at me with their big ball of hate and anger, if it's of the variety of you raped my childhood, you should get ass cancer, my initial response to them is, dude, who hurt you?
Yeah.
Like, because it wasn't my movie.
Right.
So you want to talk it out because there's something else going on.
Sure.
And if I can get past the initial, 50-foot wall of hate and get to like, okay, what did you hate about Jason Goes to Hell? Like, what's the thing you hate about the movie? There's not no fucking hockey mask. Okay, cool. Got it. You blew up Jason. What the fuck? Got it. There's a fucking slug body hopping. What the fuck is that? Okay, cool. Got it. Okay, I hear you. Did you like the effects? Oh, badass. No, the effects are fucking great. Okay, cool. How about the kills? Are the kills fun? Oh, the kills are great. How about the tent death? Oh, either number one or number two of the entire franchise. Great, I'll take it along with the sleeping bag in part 7. Awesome. Do you like the action sequences, all the guns and all the like chase and shoot 'em ups and all that? Oh yeah, that was cool. I didn't expect that. How about Creighton Duke? Second best character in the franchise. Freaking awesome. Okay, awesome. By the end of our conversation, we get to a place where I'm like, you just don't like that the hockey mask isn't every other scene of the movie.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the problem. And what's amazing is the number of people who've gone back, looked at the movie, and come back to me and been like, you know what? Didn't suck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll take that as a win. Awesome. Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Love it. If you just meet the movie for what it is, no, it's not a carbon copy of the other films. No, I wasn't going to do that. I as a filmmaker, I wasn't interested in that. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But if you because look, and I'm sure look, bringing up the Halloween franchise is perfect, actually. What the problem with all of these franchise movies becomes, what the problem starts to create. Usually the first and the second films are the best in all the franchises, and they're the scariest. But there's a reason for that. See, nobody ever roots for the shark in Jaws. No one. You root for the people on the boat. The problem with the Friday the 13th films, with the Halloween movies, with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, by the third movie, the hero of the movie is the monster. Well, that's not a horror movie anymore. That's a wrestling movie. You've picked your favorite wrestler. You're going into the ring with him, and I get it. I love watching, your favorite evil wrestler win a match. Like, that's fucking awesome, right? That's just cool. The bad guy wins. Cool, I'm into that until the bad guy loses, and then you're more into it. So they would create these paper-thin characters because the studios knew if we make these people too likable and then we murder them, no one's going to have a good time. Because you're killing the idea of their hero, who is the guy with the machete and the hockey mask. You're going to hurt that brand.
Right.
So my movie was going, hey, what if I have a whole town of interesting people? And because I had grown up with the movies, I'm like, the rest of the audience has grown up with these movies, and all these people are in their 20s and 30s now. Why don't we make a movie for those people? Because it's not the teenagers that are making you money anymore. It's these people who love these movies. Well, we've all grown up. So how about give them adult problems and adult issues, and we'll make a movie about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's really what we ended up making a movie about. And suddenly, if you don't know where Jason's coming from, Jason gets scary again.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. The film was ahead of its time. I was 7 when it first came out. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't like change or thinking out of the box with films, and it takes years to pass to appreciate it, So like I said, when I was 7, with it not being Jason and crossing over to people, I was kind of confused because I'm like, okay. But as I'm older and I go back and rewatch it, I'm like, okay, like I see what you've done with this film. And then like the whole backstory kind of going back with the black magic and everything, and you appreciate things more. And I think that people miss it. It was like the same thing with Halloween 3, with Michael not being in it, and now people love it. You know what I mean? So it's like it all falls back and it comes back around. But
look, remember, right over your head, you've got that great Scream poster, right?
Yep.
I got offered Scream right after Jason Goes to Hell. The Weinstein sent me Scream. Originally, it was called Scary Movie. And I got that script. They wanted me to direct the movie. And the reason was because they had seen Jason Goes to Hell. Mm. They're like, here's a guy who's commenting on the genre that he's making a movie in. That's the guy we need. And then, of course, Wes Craven read the script and was like, I want to do it. And I was like, I ain't getting that job. That's done. Yeah. And by the way, I was never happier to not get a job. I was like, yes, Wes should make that movie. Of course he should.
Yeah.
But 2 years after Jason Goes to Hell comes out, Scream comes out and revolutionizes the industry, but doing a lot of the crap that we were already playing with. The first 8 minutes of Jason Goes to Hell is me commenting on every trope in a Friday the 13th movie. You know, the young hot girl goes to a cabin in the middle of the forest to take a shower. It's ridiculous. But when you realize they're using her to capture Jason, it's like, oh, she's bait.
Yeah.
So they're using the tropes against the villain of the movie you're watching right now.
Yeah.
You know? So that was kind of the idea. So yeah, we swung for the fences. And look, it took a long time. And trust me, I would have rather not had people swing at me at a bar.
Sure.
Like I would have rather that didn't happen. But I will say this. I kind of love the haters.
Oh, you need them. It keeps you going.
Well, and you know what? People talk about Jason Goes to Hell. They don't talk about Friday 3.
Yeah.
They don't talk about Friday 7 or 8. They don't talk about them. It's like those movies don't exist. No one talks about them anymore. And they are still talking about Jason Goes to Hell because people get into fights about it. And if they keep fighting about it, it means it's in their brains. And the other thing, when we were doing the documentary, we have a thank you perk, right? So for like $20, you get your name on the movie as a thank you, and we get to make the movie. Great. But we were halfway through the campaign, and I said, we're missing out on a big audience. I was like, we got no perk for the haters. So, and I said, every hater owns at least 4 copies of my movie. All of them. They own it on every form. If you had a Laserdisc player when it came out, you have it on Laserdisc. You have the VHS, the uncut, unrated VHS. You got the DVD, and you got a Blu-ray hanging around, and probably a bootleg Blu-ray, right? So that's you have those 4 in your collection, and you hate my movie, but you spent well over $120 on my movie,
Sure.
Not including that you saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
So you spent a ton of money on this movie, right? And you fucking hate my movie. Okay. So I was like, all right, for $20, you can tell me to go fuck myself. So we are the first movie ever to have a fuck you credit. We have a thank you, and then we have a fuck you. And a lot of people paid for the fuck you credit, like a lot of people.
That's awesome.
Hey.
And here's what's great. They're going to buy the Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah.
They're into me for $50.
And they're going to want you to sign it, too.
Oh, you know they're going to want me to sign it. And my favorite part about it is nobody really thought it through when they paid for the perk, because it's going to say thank you, and there's going to be 1,000 names, and then it's just going to say fuck you, and it's going to have a bunch of names. So who's saying fuck you to who?
Right.
Oh, shit. I need to know one thing, though.
Yes.
Jason Goes to Hell. There's a deleted scene when Jason transforms into a demon. Why was that pulled from the film?
A couple reasons. Okay. The effect was incredible. Like the K&B boys. Oh, guys, they did such a good job for me. My God. And we got this beautiful actor who didn't have legs to play the demon. So he had this long, like 16-foot tail. It was insane. A couple things happened. One, New Line was balking at sort of like how monster movie it got. It got really like it went full monster movie by the third act. And the effect did look a little boogity. Okay. And that was our thing about anything in the movie that was a little off. If it looked boogity, we kind of went, eh. So there were a few things that got excised from the picture. That was one. I will say, for me, the saddest cut we had to make out of the movie was Creighton Duke's backstory, because we did shoot it. We wrote it and we shot it, and it was really cool. But God, here's the thing. If a movie is 90 minutes long, you get an extra screening a day at a movie theater.
Okay.
If it's 100 minutes long, you don't get that extra screening. That's it. You're done. So your movie makes 20% more money on opening weekend if you keep it under 90 minutes.
Okay. Simply
because you have more screenings. You have more chance for people to buy tickets. And New Line was like, this movie's coming in. It's coming in on time. By the way, we were the cut, I think the cut on DVD is 93 minutes if you watch the unrated. The rated is 3 minutes shorter. And that's not all gore. They cut down the movie to keep it inside that 90-minute bracket.
Okay.
So when the MPAA, tore us to pieces, sons of bitches. Talk about. By the way, look, back then, it's just a bunch of religious lunatics. But now, the fact that we still have an MPAA, I just go like, what world am I living in where there's this antiquated system for people who pay money to see a movie in a theater, who know what they're getting? You go to see Terrifier, or better yet, Terrifier 2, you know what you're paying for, right? So what are we doing? But your kid can watch Terrifier 2 on his television 12 days later.
Right.
There's no MPAA there to protect them from that evil movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is this craziness around, like, can we stop with the censoring and the bullshit? If people want to see something, let them see it. They're going to see it on their television anyway. We can release unrated stuff all day long. Why are we still policing ourselves?
Yeah.
It's nuts.
It's a great question. Yeah.
It's a body. There's no purpose anymore. There's no reason for it. There was never a reason for it, but now there really isn't.
Yeah.
And one thing, you brought up earlier, working with your family over the years, I loved how you were able to kind of like put your brother Kip into the film. He played Officer Randy. He was the last person possessed by Jason in the film. How has it been working with your brother over the years on a lot of projects?
It was amazing. Kip and I, because I was doing theater from the time I was 15, Kip is actually, he's in the documentary, of course, in Hearts of Darkness, and he talks about how, like, when people ask him, like, well, what was it like being directed by your brother? He's like, it was like my childhood. It's like my whole childhood was directed by my brother. And look, Kip had been on Broadway when he was 14. He was in the revival of Oliver, and then he was on the new Leave It to Beaver for 5 years as the lead of the show. He was Kip Cleaver on that show. So he had this kind of rich career. And I will tell you, like, getting a chance to do that movie together was like, again, we were kids in a candy store. Like, we were like, I mean, it was ridiculous. It was like the Animal House of movies. Like, it was all young people, like, doing all this shit. And, the guys from K&B were all kids at the time. So we were all just like going out and making this like kick-ass slasher monster movie that suddenly I put scenes that John Woo inspired in there. I mean, like, what Friday the 13th movie has a gun battle? Like, we just like, I was like, anything I could come up with, like, let's do that too. Let's put that in the movie. It's like, just why not?
Sure.
So, but no, working with Kip was amazing. And then right after Jason Goes to Hell, I got offered everything had a part number. Everything had a sequel. It was like all sequels. So Amityville 97, Pumpkinhead 2, Leprechaun Back 2, Da Hood. It was great. It was great. Everything had a number. And I just went, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. So you don't want to get pigeonholed into just being the sequel guy.
Yeah. And the thing is, Jason Goes to Hell has no number on it. It has no part number. So I'm like, I didn't start my career that way. I'm not going to keep my career that way. And so my wife and I, Deborah, who's my partner, and she's a genius and she's a brilliant actor. She and I started writing together. We sold a bunch of original stuff to the studios at that point. And at that time, I really wanted to get behind the camera again. And my brother Kip, who had been on Broadway doing Les Mis, he was playing Marius on Broadway. He wrote this play that he wanted to turn into a movie. And he had written my student film when I was at NYU. We did that together. So it was like, great, let's return to those roots. Let's do that. And I went back to New York and I shot this tiny little movie called Let It Snow for $200,000. It was insane. And the movie was a giant Sundance hit. And suddenly I had this whole other career that smacked up on me. And Kip and I were writing for television studios. We wrote 5 different shows in 1 year because of that movie. And that was a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
So I zigged when everybody expected me to zag, which was like, okay, like, I'd rather be that guy. My favorite filmmaker, look, I am a Spielberg devotee always, but my true heart belongs to a guy named Alan Parker. And you guys, I'm sure, are well versed. But Alan Parker did Bugsy Malone, the kiddie musical where kids shoot each other with cream pies, and his next movie is Midnight Express. And then he does Fame, and then he does Angel Heart. And you're like, what? Where is this guy going? And all of them are masterpieces. Like, this guy is like the best. And for me, I always loved, by the way, the problem with Alan Parker is that you ask most people what's your favorite Alan Parker movie, and they look at you and you go, who's Alan Parker? That's the problem. Because if you don't have that one thing, but I will tell you, when you have the one thing, you know, Wes was a prisoner to it.
Sure.
Wes didn't want to make horror movies his whole life. He didn't want to. Wes was one of the kindest men I've ever known. He was a sweetheart, and he loved horror movies. He had a love for the genre, but he wanted to do music of chance and other things. It's why Serpent the Rainbow happens, where he's like, well, can I do something political and more interesting? And like, you know, he wanted to break free. The audience wouldn't let him. John Carpenter is another example. I mean, Starman is one of the best movies John Carpenter ever made. Most people don't know it exists.
Yeah, that's such a great movie. Yeah,
it's an incredible film, and it's a science fiction love story, and like one of the best love stories of that period. It's extraordinary. So I took the, you know, I rolled the dice, and I did a romantic comedy. And suddenly I got nothing but great reviews, and people loved it, and it made people happy, and it was squishy and nice. And I was like, oh, well, this feels good. I'm not getting no one swinging at me in a bar for this one. But I have to tell you, my heart always goes back to horror. It's what I love the most. It's what I love watching the most. And so I'm always getting sucked back into the genre. And my wife is just as much of a ridiculous fan as I am. And so, you know, while I was doing this television stuff with my brother, suddenly a lot more horror stuff came knocking. And we followed it, and it led us, eventually led us to Texas Chainsaw. So, which, so crazy. We were up against 17 other writers for that project. Like, wow. I've never been in that kind of competition for a project before. And all the heavy hitters were in there, like everybody. And Deb and I kicked their asses, basically. That's kind of how that went.
Yeah.
And it felt good. Like, that was an exciting moment of like, okay, like, we wrote the shit out of this. Like, that was truly trial by fire. But by the way, the movie that they made is not the movie we wrote.
Yeah.
At all the movie we wrote. Little things like our movie took place in 1993.
That's not what Sean S. Cunningham said to us. No, I'm just kidding.
By the way, you wouldn't even get me to be surprised by it. I'd be like, sure.
Just joking.
By the way, Sean goes around saying how much he hates Jason Goes to Hell, and then tells people he reshot 60% of the movie. He literally
did he buy a credit that said "fuck you"?
No, he didn't. No, dude. We asked him for interviews 3 times, and his "fuck you" was in not responding.
Nah, man.
But I went, cool, because I got lots of footage of you, dude.
Yeah.
I've had people at conventions for years taking footage of you saying all kinds of shit. So you're in my movie whether you want to be or not. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. So the thing is, like, you just brought up like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, man. Like, I feel like you should get a lot of credit for being the person willing to take a chance to change the way stories can go instead of doing the same thing over and over. I read the clip like of what you and your wife put together for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that you wanted to do, and I heard that it was something like Leatherface versus Scarface.
That was the original pitch. Yeah. That was our original pitch. Yeah.
Just take us back to that. You know what I mean? Like, what you truly wanted to do with it.
They asked us what we wanted to do. I said, well, what I want to do is go back to the original film. Yeah. I said, I want to honor what Toby made rather than retconning anything. I want to take it from the moment Sally runs out of the house, the moment she tries to get away. And I said, if we can take the original footage from the first movie and break down the layers, which is how they make things 3D that aren't 3D. I said, let's make the end of the original Texas Chainsaw a 3D movie, but using his footage.
Sure.
And Toby was involved with the movie. Toby was with us on this. So he loved that idea. Everybody loved that idea. Like, great. Okay. So you explode out of the house. I said, where is Sally going to go when she gets away? Because she gets away. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to the police. That's the first place they're going to go. Then I want to see the police come back to the house. And I want to see the Sawyers have their last stand. And so there's a shot that is not in the movie. It drives me crazy because it was the shot this was the shot that we won the job on. Like, this was the moment I knew we won the job. So there is a shot of a woman who smashes out a window in the Sawyer house with a gun and starts firing into a crowd of police and townspeople with her gun while her baby is sucking on her breast. I was like, I want the image of that woman with that gun holding her baby to her chest. And like, that's the Sawyers. Like, that to me is the image of Texas Chainsaw, right? Yeah. So that baby is stolen by a childless couple in the crowd who finds her after they burn down the house, after they kill all the Sawyers, right? So Bubba gets away, right? We don't see how Bubba gets away, but Bubba gets away and the baby is stolen. Well, there's always been a Sawyer in the police department, always. That's always been the mythology of the movies. And so I wanted to have it that this girl, Heather, goes to art school in Chicago. She is then transported to Mexico with her boyfriend at art school. Her rich boyfriend at art school they're going to go for spring break down to this house that his family has in Mexico, and they're going to party all week, right? So a bunch of their friends go to this house to party. When they get there, we find out the boyfriend is actually a drug-dealing dirtbag who is actually picking up drugs to bring them back to Chicago. That's the only reason he's really there, okay? And he's put all of his friends around him to make it look legit. Well, the cartel in Nuevo Laredo takes them all hostage, which, by the way, happens all the time. Like, that's a real thing. Americans get kidnapped a lot in Mexico. So it's like, at that time in particular, I was like, this is perfect. And there was this whole thing between Laredo and Nuevo Laredo. I don't know if you know this. They're towns right next to each other, right on the border. And it is literally like this weird mirror image where Nuevo Laredo is like where you go to die. Okay. And then there's Laredo, Texas, which is a lovely little town, right? So I have her photograph gets disseminated to the FBI and to all the local police along the border. And the guy who is a Sawyer in the police department sees Heather, the Alexander Daddario's character. And there is a tattoo that was put on all of the Sawyer children that they all have. And he sees the tattoo. And he goes, no one takes one of ours. And all the Sawyers that remain in the community all jump into the back of the pickup truck and head across the border. And it's Leatherface with his chainsaw and the family going up against the Mexican drug cartel over the kidnapping of Heather to get her back. Yeah, so essentially I was like, how do we turn the Sawyers into this family that we actually give a shit about them getting this girl back? Again, they're bloodthirsty maniacs. They're all the good shit that we love about the Sawyers. But I was like, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre had been through so much by that point. It was so beaten up. I was like, and I'm sorry, guys, like, how can you say no to Leatherface versus Scarface?
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, say hello to my little friend and he brings out the chainsaw. Come on. Like, that just writes itself. The marketing is amazing. They did not go for that one. Sadly. And it's funny because I've had executives call me and go like, man, we so should have made that movie. I'm like, still there, guys. Still there. You guys can get past your nonsense. We can do this. But they loved how we had this thing about the baby being kidnapped. We loved all that stuff. They loved all of that. And they went, how do you build off of that to give us a new generation of Sawyers? And that was the way to do it, was to have Heather return to the rich side of the Sawyer family. By the way, the shot that's not in the movie And it's so sad. The last shot of the film, you were supposed to go over the Sawyer house for the first time and see the background of what's behind the Sawyer house.
Yeah.
And it's nothing but oil derricks for miles. And you suddenly realize the Sawyers are oil barons. And our whole backstory for the Sawyer clan was that the groundwater had been poisoned for generations. And so these people had all this oil, but they were slowly going mad from the amount of oil in their drinking water.
Okay.
That they were being poisoned. And that's how they became these lunatics.
So in your version, they were not inbreeding. They were slowly going mad from poison.
Yep. Oh, by the way, they started inbreeding.
Yeah.
But they did because they were driven mad.
Okay. I was listening to something recently and they did top 3 movies with inbreeding, and Texas Chainsaw was up there, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I guess I never really thought of that. Like Hills of Eyes is a more obvious one to me, and Wrong Turn. But I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is kind of in there possibly.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. You're not allowed to talk about cannibalism, however, if you make the movie at Lionsgate, which is where we made the movie. Steve Susko was the first guy they hired for that project. And Steve's an amazing writer, a great guy, good director too. I don't know if you guys saw Dark Web 2, but he did a terrific job with that movie. He's really, really talented guy. He wrote the original version of the movie. Lionsgate wouldn't even let us look at the script. They threw it out. They would not let us look at it because his first draft came in with all this cannibalism, and they went, no, you can't have cannibalism in the movie. And he was like, why? Well, the reason is because Lionsgate released Midnight Meat Train with Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
And it is to this day one of the biggest disasters that Lionsgate ever had. And they immediately said, no movies with cannibalism. We won't do it at the studio. And so they told him to take all the cannibalism out, rewrite.
Yeah.
And Steven is such a madman that Steven put in more cannibalism. Like delivered a draft rich with cannibalism, and they were like, get this guy out. No, that's it.
Sure.
So they benched him, and that's when Deb and I were brought in to kind of figure out what is this movie. And by the way, people complain about the timeline. They're right. I complain about it too. We had no smartphone scene because we didn't have Marty McFly come in with a smartphone for that. We made the movie in 1993, and the reason I know that is because in the screenplay of the movie playing in the town square is Jason Goes to Hell.
There you go.
Yep.
It all comes together.
I have the receipts.
It all comes together. I love how they didn't decide to go with Scarface, but instead they went with Trey Songz.
They sure did. They sure did.
They tried to do the Busta Rhymes of Halloween Resurrection.
Do you know what's so insulting about that, though, is that, and by the way, this is not on Lionsgate. I got to tell you, Lionsgate and New Line were the 2 best studios I ever worked with because they love the genre. Like they love the genre, right? And they're protective of it. The problem was that the producer on our Texas Chainsaw was such a maniac, and he shall remain nameless. He's such a lunatic that he drove the executives crazy. He would have screaming fights with them when they would give us notes. And I'm like, dude, it's okay. Like, we know how to do this. Like, this is our job. We write and we get notes and we make everybody happy. So we'll make everybody happy. He took us to lunch after one meeting, cried for 2 hours. I was like, dude, stop. We're good. They could not work with the guy. They ended up saying, we're not going to make the movie. We'll distribute it, but we're not giving you the money to make it. So we wrote a $20 million movie. They shot an $8 million movie. So the Trey Songz death, just that death, okay? In the movie, the car, the van falls and he gets some glass in his throat. And I'm like, Deb and I, the first time we saw that, we're like, oh, come on. No. It's so weak and so like lazy, just lazy filmmaking. In our version, the van flips over, the side of the roof of the van becomes the side of the van, and he's laying against that side, right? And suddenly they hear the sound of the saw, right? And then it cuts out. And they're all waiting, and then you hear it again, but it's much closer. And suddenly and the saw comes through the top of the van through his chest at Heather, and Heather kind of goes like, "Oh God!" and he grabs the saw, and all of his fingers launch into her face in 3D.
Yes.
Oh, that would have been
that
sick.
was our kill.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we had a sequence where Leatherface was walking through a stampeding herd of cattle while buzzing the saw. And that in 3D, I'm like, that's your poster. Your poster, the 1,000 head of cattle and Leatherface in the middle of it with the saw. That's your poster. What are you doing? Again, they went cheap, which is such a shame. It wasn't 2 guys beating up Leatherface at the end of the movie. It was 12 guys beating on Leatherface at the end of the movie. It was a bigger, badder. And by the way, that they didn't have to change. Extras don't cost anything. You get 10 other guys. Who gives a shit? It's a lack of imagination that puts the thing over the finish line. And then they add stuff that they think is going to become catchphrases like, do your thing, cuz. Oh, wait, my favorite. No one ever talks about this, but it is my favorite bad line in the movie, which is the girl who comes from Chicago with her friend to visit Texas, and she's the one who says, "Welcome to Texas, motherfuckers."
Oh man,
why is she welcoming? Texas? What?
That's nuts.
Oh,
so it was just stuff that we just went like, you're
it just seems like that's the pattern over there, because we had Chris Thomas Delvin, who is the writer of the Netflix Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, he was brought in to kind of like give his pitch too, you know what I mean? Like he was going in with saying like, you know, hey, I wasn't guaranteed the job. It was just an offer, and so I had to make the wildest pitch that I could, and it was crazy. And then they would he got the job, and they was like, yeah, we're not doing that.
Right.
It's like the same thing as you know?
They do it all the time. They do it all the time. And again, you look, part of our job is thinking on our feet. I will say this. God bless Texas Chainsaw in our careers, because, I mean, beyond the fact that the script we wrote got us like 4 other jobs, like immediately. We got 4 other jobs from that job, because people read the script and were like, oh my God, you guys are going to revolutionize that franchise. And by the way, Toby Hooper called us at home to say, hey kids, call this kid. Hey kids, I just read your last draft. I just wanted to tell you, you 2 have written the only true sequel to my film. And I said, Toby, you made part 2. He says, I'm including part 2.
Okay.
I was like, wow.
I
turned to my wife. I was like, you can put me in a box now. Like, I'm done. I've hit all the goals. I'm good. But that movie, watching that movie in a theater, Deb and I were alone in the theater. They had let us have the Lionsgate Theater to show us a screening by ourselves 2 weeks before the movie was released. And I remember just the feeling of like, our names are up there, but that's not our work. That's a really watered down version of our movie. I'm not proud of this movie. Like, it's a good movie. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it wasn't the movie that we were like. I know what could be, and when you know what's in your head is so much better than what they put on the screen for the fans. And I'm like, damn it, I just wanted to see that movie. I didn't direct the movie. I just wanted to see it. I just wanted to see that movie, right? I was like, that's a movie that fans will lose their minds over. I'm telling you, if they shot our script word for word, the Texas Chainsaw would be a different franchise today. Be a totally different franchise. That said, it was the moment that Deb and I called my best friend Brian Sexton, who was an associate producer. It was how we met on my Val Kilmer movie, Conspiracy, that I wrote and directed, where I had to make a movie with the devil, and I mean Val Kilmer, who kicked me in the nuts on day 6 of the movie on set.
Oh, man.
And the reason was that he had gotten a new pair of Crocs and wanted to show them to me. And I said, hang on one sec, Val. I just said, hang on one sec, Val. That's it. And I got kicked in the nuts and landed on the floor of the set. And that's day 6, guys. That's early in the show. he
Oh,
weathered
man.
that storm with me, this guy Brian Sexton, who is Deborah and my best friend, and he was ready to leave his company. He hated making movies like that, of these sort of action pictures where stars would just behave badly and you'd give them millions of dollars. And so we said, I kind of want to make movies that like I believe in and that I feel strongly about, and that if somebody hates it, they actually hate what we made, not something that someone else manufactured.
100%. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's when Skeleton Crew got formed. It's when we created the production company. And that's the moment that, Secret Santa happened.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, yes, do the studios pay better? Yes. No two ways about it. Studio money is lovely. But the feeling of something coming out, look, Secret Santa's been at 25 festivals around the world. We opened at Sitges. We were at, Fright Fest, Glasgow, and London. Fright Fest released the movie as the first title they ever released as a theatrical run of a movie. That feeling, man, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than being in a theater and seeing people react to your work, and it's your work. That's exciting. And it also, the way we built the company, we have three sections of the company. There's our high budget section, our television department, and then there's the where the fuck did Roger Corman go section. And that's my favorite, because I don't know where all the filmmakers are, where all the producers are, who give a new voice a chance without spending a lot of money. Like, you have a tiny amount of money. I mean, Roger Corman would give you a can of soup and a ball of string, but you're going to make your movie. You got to make your film. And I don't understand. I don't understand not letting people have that. I don't get it. And so that's what this was about. That's what Secret Santa was about. And so, what we're doing now.
Can you tell our listeners, the plot line of Secret Santa?
Sure. So, as I said earlier, I was raised in a household where there was this insanity around Christmas time, and I was really interested in the idea of, like, why is it that we hold this holiday so sacred, when everyone who ever talks about going home for Christmas is dreading it? Like, no one is like, yay, I get to see all my family. No, said no one, never. You might have an uncle you want to see, but then you got to deal with the cousins, and the cousins are assholes. And as our world gets more and more divided, those dinners only become more contentious. So the concept of Secret Santa is, what if you had that holiday party that you dread, but you go with your fake smile and you go there trying to be the best cousin you can be. And for some reason, somebody has done something so that anything you want to say to them, you're going to say.
Yeah.
And eventually anything you want to do to them, you're going to do.
Yeah. So
that's really the movie. The movie is the holiday feast gone horribly wrong.
Yeah. This movie reminded me of the first half of You're Next, where they're having met with Joe Lynch's Mayhem.
I love that. I love both those films, actually, and I love both those guys. I love Adam and I love Joe. They're both great guys. I love both those films. So thank you for that, by the way. Like, thank you for that, because those are films that I adore, and filmmakers that I adore. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I'll take those comparisons all day long, man. That's great. And by the way, I mean, You're Next is a low budget film. It ain't low budget like our film. Secret Santa, my partner was at AFM, and there was literally no horror. No one had horror. Like, people were freaking out. They needed horror material. So he calls Dev and I. He's like, what do we have that we can make really quick for no money? And we had some like found footage things that we had written and stuff, but we're like, no, I think that wave's over. We need to move on from that. I think we can do something better than that. And he called us on Halloween morning. And I said, give me a couple hours. Let me see what I can come up with. Right. So I immediately get on the phone with one of my actors. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about, I have been teaching in Los Angeles this January to be 30 years that I run my own theater company and school in LA. So I've been teaching all that time, and I've had amazing actors go through my program, like just incredible people. And we become a troupe. So there is literally a theater troupe, but I use it for film. I was like, why is it that only theater troupes, that the stage are the only places where people get to do this? I want to do this for movies. Like, I want to have a troupe of actors that I have a second language with. So I went to one of these actors, a woman named Pat Destro, and I said, hey, remember that time I was up at your Big Bear house and you said, anytime I want to make a movie here, I can? That still hold true? She was like, yeah, absolutely. I said, great, because I got a great part for you, and I want to do a movie at your house. I said, can you do me a favor? I need it for the first 2 weeks of January. Can you make sure that the two houses on either side of you, because it's all on Big Bear Lake, I said, I know those houses are Airbnbs. Can you see if I can rent those two houses for the same period of time? And can you check with all your neighbors that they'll keep their Christmas lights up through the middle of January? And she went, done. You got it. She calls me an hour later, says, you got the three houses and you got all the Christmas lights. We're good. I said, great. Now I've got my location for my film. I've got where I'm going to put the cast and crew, and I am set dressed. I have not written one word of the movie yet. Not a word. I called Brian. I said, I got an idea of what I can do. I'm not going to talk to you about it. Let me just go to work. Deb and I sat down. 20 days later, we had a screenplay for Secret Santa. Nothing had flowed out of me that quickly in so long. I mean, it just like burst out of me. And we finished the draft, did a reading of it. My actors walked in after reading the script and were like, what is this movie? Like, they did not know what it was. Like, on the page, like, this is insane. I said, just trust me. We're going to read it. You'll hear you'll get it. You'll get it. We sit around this table we created in my friend Michelle Allaire's kitchen. We're all shoved in like this huge cast inside this tiny little room. We start reading the script, and on page 2, people start howling with laughter. I was like, you getting it now? They're like, uh-huh. So we run the script. Deb and I did, this is not a joke, 2 hours of revisions on the script. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
We brought our producing partner in. Now, our producer was going to send a production manager with us to go shoot the movie. He wasn't going to produce. He was going to be back in LA working on other projects. So he had a dinner right after the reading we were going to do, right? So he said, right after the reading, I got to go. I was like, no problem. So he sits down. He has not read a word of this. I've not let him see the script. I want him to hear the script, much like I did when we saw Johnny Zombie, which, by the way, ended up becoming my boyfriend's back for Disney. It did get made, and it was a big movie. Okay. It's a terrible movie, but it's a movie. So he sits down. We run the piece. Everybody's howling, laughing, out of their minds. We finish the movie. He excuses himself. He goes in the other room. He comes back. I said, you got to go for your dinner? He says, no, I just canceled that. I'm producing this movie. No one else is doing this movie. This is ours. I was like, done. We pre-produced the movie in the month of December. Now, nothing gets done in December. Like, our industry shuts down in December. We're literally about to go on a 6-week vacation because of our industry. And we had to pre-produce the movie in that month. We shot the first 2 weeks of January. We were done by Martin Luther King Day. And if you're keeping score, that is from the moment we came up with the idea, from the moment I got that phone call to the time we were in the can, 10 weeks. That's 10 weeks from beginning to end of making a movie.
Okay.
And we made the movie for 30 grand.
Nice.
That's cool.
And by the way, it's a union film.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
Now for everybody, the film's now streaming on Screambox, so definitely check it out. Like you said, you and Deb, you guys wrote this film. Was it always planned for her to star in this film?
Absolutely. From day one. Day one, I was like, and by the way, she's kind of playing a character very similar to my mom, so that's
okay.
That's a little crazy. When your wife is playing someone who's based somewhat on your mother, a little creepy. But yes, it was always going to be Deb. always.
Okay.
Yeah, it was I wrote that part for her specifically. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that whole
So-
cast, everybody in that is part of the Skeleton Crew troupe, including Drew Lynch and Michael Rady, and like people who Drew was the first runner-up in America's Got Talent.
Nice
comedian. So so we got a lot of people in there that have had great careers, but they're all people that I work with every week. Yeah.
So I mean, the obviously the situations that come up are crazy, and the characters are, I don't know, they're such a wide range of personalities. So I mean, obviously that was part of the intention, to show off or highlight how wide a variety our families can be, right?
Yeah. And also so that everybody, look, I want everybody to walk out of the theater going oh my God, my aunt is just like that.
Yes.
Like that there's one character, at least one person that you recognize from your family who behaves just like that. And look, the other part of it, because I really, while, and I'm sure you guys can see from my filmmaking, and especially Jason Goes to Hell is the easiest way you see it. I have always been a very inclusive filmmaker, and that movie in particular, the casting all around is inclusive. So I wanted Secret Santa to be that as well, but I also wanted to kind of go up against this idea of not being able to talk about the things that movies should be able to talk about, that all of us should be able to talk about, without getting into fights with each other, but with I wanted to put a spotlight on this awfulness that exists, that we keep it so quiet that we don't know. Light is the thing that extinguishes everything. It exposes everything, and it tells you who people are. And so the movie is deliberately un-PC. And when I've gone to festivals, whenever I open the film, I'm like, guys, if I have not offended every person in this room tonight, I have not done my job.
Yeah.
As filmmakers, we're supposed to challenge things. We're supposed to challenge the status quo and make you kind of go oh my God, I can't believe they said that. Good. Yeah. This movie is that movie. We're going to say shit that you go, oh, did he really? Yes, he really. But by the way, they're all horrible people. These are terrible people in this movie.
Yeah.
And they're all going to die horrible deaths that are incredibly enjoyable.
Well, it does something interesting where by the end of the film, you're sort of rooting for characters you didn't know if you were going to like in the beginning of the film. Mm-hmm. So I think that it really plays with that idea of who is it that I'm supposed to be rooting for? And you get attachment to them for more natural reasons, through their redeeming qualities. So I think that, obviously that's part of the intention, and, it's highlighted in there.
Thank you.
But then the people that you hate, you really hate. So,
and as you should,
for sure. Yeah.
And look, I also want there to be people that you love to hate, where they're funny and they're awful. So you're laughing at the shit they're saying, and you're going, "Oh my God, can't wait to see them die."
Yeah.
That there's fun to it. Look, what I wanted to make a Christmas movie that was in parts scary and gory, but I wanted it to be a great ride. I wanted it to be fun for people. And when you don't have money, what you do have is dialogue.
Sure.
Yeah. You can say shit, and that costs you nothing.
Yeah. And that seems to be true, or just similar to just your style as a filmmaker. Because even what you were talking about with Jason Goes to Hell, kind of more character development and growing attachments, or, disdain for the characters versus just these carbon copies that are going to just be picked off one by one.
I have to tell you, this is one of the nicest and most exciting interviews I've had in I don't know how many years, because both of you seem to actually get what I'm doing. That's crazy to me. And so I'm kind of overjoyed. I just got, compared to You're Next and Mayhem, and then you get what I'm doing with character. I'm this is fucking awesome.
Well, we appreciate that.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I'm not used to this, so that's very nice.
Doing this stuff, we matured over the years. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Talking with people, and
absolutely.
so we see your side of the view. You know what I mean? Each side of it. You know, so that's the thing about doing this.
And
Yeah.
I also
Great.
think Brendan and I have like a really interesting perspective, because we're very against like just hating something because the general population is hating it,
Right.
or like feeding into like that internet. Like when something's getting a lot of hate, I try to stay away from the internet until I've been able to watch it. So like a lot of what you were talking about earlier really resonates with us as far as the way we view films, and like some of the issues that we see in the community at times. Like people tend to like all piggyback on the same train, which I think can be really just not helpful. And then years later, suddenly everyone's like, "Oh, I love that film." It's like, no, you didn't when it came out, though.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, that's a little bit about us as far as how we view films. But I appreciate all the sentiments that you said about what goes into your filmmaking and the different takes that you bring into your films. I think that's really something that like anyone out there that's looking to make films should be listening to, and not be afraid to take chances.
You can't be.
And to pitch ideas that like, aren't just the, I when you were talking about your intention with Friday, Jason Goes to Hell, it's the exact opposite of what they did with the Friday the 13th remake. They went back to those stereotype characters and didn't, there was no like draw to them. They were just the prototypes, the jock, the all the characters. So yeah, for us, I mean, that's fine. That's a film that we'll probably watch, but like we also appreciate someone who's not afraid to take a different approach. So we appreciate you for doing that with your films. And Jason Goes to Hell, I know we're both fans. I remember watching it as a teen, and I'm a couple of years older than Brandon. When I watched it, I remember I was with a bunch of friends, and I don't know how many times they paused it on the tent scene. Just,
I mean, how do you not?
Exactly.
By the way, I'll tell you, there's a really cool thing. So Michelle Clooney has never been interviewed about Jason Goes to Hell. Never. She was interviewed for the doc, right? I got her to come back and do it. She had never seen her uncut scene. She'd never seen it unrated, and she watches it on camera in the doc.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It is so spectacular. Her reaction to her own killing and to the sex scene in general is so amazing. Like it just made me love her 10 times more than I already do. But you're right. Like that scene is so, and remember that scene was an additional piece of photography. We added that after the film was done, right? Because the audience, which included Peter Bracke, by the way, the writer of Crystal Lake Memories, who now is the executive producer on the documentary and he was the historian for the film. They wanted more campers by the lake having sex and getting killed. They wanted that scene, right? And I was patently against it because I'm like, there's something so weirdly puritanical about the Friday the 13th movies. I always love when like the Christian right comes after those movies, because I'm like, well, let's see, if you drink or do drugs or have premarital sex, you get murdered. I would think you guys would love that.
Exactly.
Like, punished instantaneously. Like that, isn't that your thing? So when they said we want one of those scenes, I was like, guys, I hate this idea. I said, I won't do sex equals death. But you know what I will do? I'll do safe sex. And when they choose to not use that condom in that scene, the whole audience en masse, when they toss the condom away, the entire audience goes, ooh. Like someone got called to the principal's office. I'm like, that's music to my... Because I had a lot of friends in New York, because that's where I grew up. A lot of my friends died of AIDS. And I was like, I'll tell that story. Like, I'm cool telling that. That's fine. So the movie is even something as simple as like, they're teenage kids are going to have sex in a movie, get killed. Yay. Even that in its own way had a little bit of revolution to it, a little bit of like, no, we're going to tell a bigger story than just two kids having sex again. But you know what? Look, guys, we deal with a genre where people watch things like Night of the Living Dead or Texas Chainsaw or Dawn of the Dead and think those movies are about cannibals and about zombies. And I'm like, no. George Romero couldn't tell a Vietnam movie, so he told a horror movie that is about Vietnam. And it is about the civil rights movement. And then he made a movie about consumerism run amok and how it's going to destroy the fabric of America. And he was right. You know, so the horror genre is like the one place where we can feed our audience this huge amount of vegetables. As long as we put a bunch of bloody ice cream on top of it, they don't know they're eating the vegetables. They have no idea, you know? And for me, like, have you guys seen Where the Devil Roams? Have you seen that yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
I didn't get to watch it yet. Yeah.
So one of my actors is one of the leads. He plays Mr. Tips in the movie, and he's fantastic. It's a brilliant job. And something that the Addams Family are doing, those filmmakers, they're challenging the status quo. Their movies are so batshit nuts, and I love that they're making them. Like, I'm like, can we have more of this? Like, I get Blumhouse, and listen, I'm against guys like Martin Scorsese going up against Marvel. Like, stop. There have always been popcorn films. Don't take away people's, Marvel. That's silly. Make good movies, the Marvels. But you got to make a good movie. But I want to go see those movies. Like, I love those films. Come on. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is my favorite film of this year so far. And by the way, it's about PETA. The movie's about animal cruelty. Like, And by the James Gunn came from horror. What a weird thing.
Exactly.
Look at that. So I am not, I am against the old men who stand on their lawns saying, "Get off my lawns, kids," and they spray you with the water bottle. I want everybody to make movies, but every time somebody goes off on the Babadook or Witch, I go, do you get this is why we can't have nice things?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we need a movie where a kid is screaming incessantly at his mother. We need that movie. It might not be your cup of tea. I get it. I get it.
Yep.
But this makes our genre better. Like, and I just read a fantastic interview that Matthew Lillard gave about Five Nights at Freddy, right? Which I have not seen yet. So don't spoil it for me.
Okay.
But I think the animatronics are going to come to life and do bad things. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen.
I'm not saying a word.
Don't tell me. Here's the thing. That movie, Lillard said, we don't care about the reviews. And we don't care if there's a bunch of people who hate that movie. We made that movie for a very specific audience. And that audience is going to come and love that movie and consume that movie. And that movie's going to make a ton of money, which it did. It has done very well because it's servicing a group of fandom, right?
Yeah.
The thing about our films, and look, by the way, I think the strikes that just happened for the WGA and for SAG are going to be incredibly helpful to independent horror movies in a big way. And I'll explain why. Right now, there's no way for an independent filmmaker to make money. Doesn't exist. It's not there. And when people go like, well, A24 is not independent film, guys.
Yeah.
When you got Pete Davidson in your movie and you're spending $6-8 million on your movie, that's not an independent film anymore, guys. Sorry. It's just not, I love when like people are like Fox Searchlight. That's not an independent movie. It says Fox before Searchlight. Here's the thing, and why we ended up with Screambox. Because Screambox was the only streamer, the only one, and they all came to us about Secret Santa. They were the only ones who put their money where their mouth was. Now, by the way, it's not a lot of money. It's an MG. It's telling the filmmakers, no, we have to have skin in this game too. We're not just going to take your work. We're going to be partners with you. And they loved the movie. Like, they got the movie. They could quote the movie. Like, they loved them. And I was like, guys, that's the kind of partnerships we all want.
Sure.
Yeah.
And look, if independent filmmakers keep having truly independent voices, is why I brought up The Witch and why I brought up Babadook, or even It Follows.
Yeah.
Right? If we can keep making cool, weird, divisive stuff, there's enough people out there, there's enough wonderful audience out there that every movie can find a home. We just have to have partners that help us find those people.
Sure.
And if the horror audience can become more embracing and less battle like over the content that's out there, if they can go like, you know what, man, yeah, Babadook's not my thing, but I'm not going to call it a bad movie because it's not bad, because it's not. There are bad movies, they exist. That's not one of them. If we can embrace the idea that horror should be the most diverse of all the genres, because we can say the most in our movies, because we hide it under that ice cream, I just think we end up with a better. I think we end up with a better genre. I think we end up with a smarter audience, a better educated audience, and I think that we, in part, end up with a better world because of it. I know that sounds so weirdly pretentious, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
These make a difference.
Yep. Yeah. Because that's the thing. Like you said, you're not that old man on the lawn saying, get off my grass. And it's about fandom. Like, you open the door for like our buddies, like Vincent DeSanti from Womp Stomp Films and Peter Anthony that created Friday the 13th Roseblood. They pay homage to you with the Duke and the Friday and his film. It's the thing, like the fans, like you created that opportunity where you just took whatever chance you had. Like these guys went and made their own thing when this film was having legal issues. You know what I mean? Like you open that door to kind of show people like, hey, we can do different things, different takes, and kind of just be creative and just push the line. So
by the way, say thank you. Dude, that's lovely. I got to tell you, anytime anybody has reached out to me about a movie and they're serious, I don't mean there's a lot of people like to talk about me. I always say Hollywood has two types of people who go to lunch and people who make movies. Very different group of people. If someone's serious and they come to me, and Peter came to me, and Vin's in the documentary about Jason. When those guys come to you and they ask a question or they ask a favor, or my voice is in both of the Never Hike movies. So I'm a reporter in all those. I always record those for Vin and send them in. He's like, can you do a reporter for me again? I'm like, of course I can. You got it. It's and look, I am all for fan movies. Like, I love them, but I also tell all fan filmmakers, and I told Vin this, I said, dude, do it and then go make something original. Like, get out of it, because you can never make money on those movies. And if they find out you made money on those movies, you got real legal problems, because Sean Cunningham will come for you. He is the fucking Babadook. But these are talented guys who now they got a training ground. Like, that's their film school, and that's the best school you can have. Like, go make a movie, man. Like, do it. And the fact that they were inspired at all by something I made, oh, dude, like that's amazing. Like, that's amazing. That's the legacy you leave behind. Sure. It's not the money you made. It's not the box office receipts. All that stuff's really nice. But who gives a shit about that if there are people who actually want to travel down that same road and tell stories and be filmmakers? Come on. Like, that's badass.
Yeah.
That's absolutely a legacy. But thank you, man. I can't tell much. I appreciate that. That's really cool. Really cool.
So I just wanted to remind all of our listeners to make sure you check out Secret Santa, which is currently out on Screambox. You know, this is different. Usually we're talking about films a little bit before they come out, but this got released, I think, last week.
Last Tuesday.
Last week. So it's pretty fresh on there. So make sure you go check that out. And Adam, thank you so much just for this conversation, you know, talking these films that, you know, we appreciate so much, but also like all the words of wisdom. I think that they're super helpful for anybody that's looking to get into filmmaking or really any career, because you know, you can extract messages from anything. So I appreciate all those words, and you know,
thanks, man.
Looking forward to the next thing that you have to bring us. Awesome,
dude. It was really, I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it was to be here with you guys.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. So after you check out Secret Santa, make sure that you tune in to our next episode next week. Until then, we'll see you later. Have a great night, everyone.
Take it easy.
Good night.